In this ball game, moving up to New York, Jets, Bills, big game of the week. For the Bills, you want to start their defense and special teams. They have a solid bunch of guys. That front four is going to get a lot of pressure on that weakened Jets offensive line. Could result into a lot of sacks and turnovers. Start the Bills defense. You also want to start Fred Jackson. He's going to ease Fitzpatrick in this ball game, and they're going to operate off play action. Start Fred Jackson, very solid runner. For the Jets, you want to start their defense. Their defense may be the best in this division, quite honestly, and they're going to be asked to put a lot of pressure. Plus, they're going to get back to blitzing. So you want to start their defense in this ball game. The sits for this ball game, you want to sit Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm just not sold on the passing game. I don't think they have the receiving threats to threaten the secondary. Plus, it's a tough defense to pass on. No, C.B. Johnson has had success with Darrelle Revis, but I will sit Fitzpatrick this week. I will also sit Stevie Johnson. I think, again, the passing game plus the fact that the Jets will be bringing the house a lot of times on first, second, third down. So I would sit those two guys if you have them on your roster. And for the Jets, I would sit Santonio Holmes. I don't think he's going to have a big day versus that very solid Buffalo Bills secondary. A big fan of their secondary. Now, some sleepers, C.J. Spiller. I think when you have an aggressive defense like the Jets, the screen game will kill you, which is why I think C.J. Spiller should be a sleeper this week and will have a big day versus the Jets. Also, Scott Chandler, the tight end. Keep an eye on him. This guy should have some success versus that 3-4 down the middle tight ends versus safeties. I like that matchup right there for the Bills. For the Jets, the sleeper, Nick Folk. I think the Jets can move the football 20-20. I don't think they're going to attack in the red zone. So that means it could be a lot of field goals for Nick Folk in the kicking game. Now let's move down to Texas, where you have the Texans taking on the Miami Dolphins in this matchup, going against a rookie quarterback. So the Texans, you want to start their defense and special teams. If you saw Trenton Holiday in the preseason, you know this guy can take it to the house, and their defense, again, always plays like they're on bath salts, crack, all that stuff that make you crazy. That's the Texans defense right there. And I will also start Matt Schaub. I think he's going to have some success operating off play action, hitting those deep over routes and those deep in routes to those big wide receivers and tight ends. So start Matt Schaub versus the Dolphins defense. Now for the Dolphins, you want to start Reggie Bush. Again, aggressive defense. Reggie Bush, all he has to do is make one miss and it could be a big gain. They're going to utilize him a lot in the passing game. And speaking of the passing game, you also will want to start Devon Best. Miss a third down, get him the football. I think those are two safe starts for Miami this week. Guys you want to sit on Miami's team, sit Ryan Tannehill. I think he's going to have a lot of pressure. He's not going to have a big debut versus that Texans defense. Tough task for this young man. And also sit Legadou Nene, as I think he has dropped the dropsies. So that's why the bulk of the passes will go to Devon Best, in my opinion. Start Best, sit Nene. For the Houston Texans, I would sit Andre Johnson. I know that's blasphemy, but sit Andre Johnson. I think they're going to be able to run the football and pass the football to many different targets. Now, some sleepers in this game. Sleepers for Miami, Charles Clay, the H-back tight end guy. Get him the football. I think that's a sleeper. Also, Fasano. I'm a big Fasano fan. I think this could also be a sleeper in this matchup as well. We got two tight ends versus that 3-4 defense. That's an advantage. Now, for the Texans, I look at Owen Daniel and also James Casey. Those two guys are some sleepers. Tight end, H-back, fullback type of guy. Keep those guys in mind as you look at this ball game with the Dolphins and the Texans. Now let's move out west. Arizona taking on Seattle. You want to start the Seahawks defense and special teams. This is a very tough defense going against a quarterback that may be struggling this week. Start the Seahawks defense and that secondary, because those guys can get their hands on a lot of footballs. And also start Russell Wilson. Why? Because his ability to get outside the pocket and gain yards with his legs, and he runs under control so he can get some yards, slide, get out of bounds. You don't have to worry about him getting injured. For the Cardinals, you want to start their defense because their defense is also very aggressive. I think they're going to do a great job of stopping the run, and they will be able to get their hands on some passes as far as maybe getting interceptions and also sacks. And I would also start Larry Fitzgerald. I know there questions at the QB spot, but still start Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's going to get his this week against the Seahawks. Guys, you should sit. I would sit Marshawn Lynch and Sidney Rice, two starters. I think those guys will get bottled up by this Cardinals defense and put a lot of pressure on the rookie quarterback. So I would say sit those two guys. And if you're looking at the Cardinals, guys you want to sit Beanie Wells. I don't think he's going to have that success versus that outstanding Seahawks front four. Some sleepers in this ball game, Golden Tate. I think if they get the football in Golden Tate's hands on these bubble screens or slip screens, his natural running ability after the catch will get a lot of yards. I think he's a talented runner with the football in his hands. And also a sleeper in this game for the Cardinals would be Ryan Williams. I think after they figure out that Beanie Wells is not as effective, they're going to throw Williams in there, and he's going to do some great things against that defense. Staying out west, looking at what the 49ers can do against Green Bay as they travel to Green Bay. I look at this game, guys you want to start for San Francisco, Vernon Davis, and also Kendall Hunter. Against an aggressive defense, tight end play and running backs that can make one miss are golden. So that's why you got to go with Vernon Davis and you have to go with Kendall Hunter. For the Green Bay Packers, I would also start Aaron Rodgers because this guy is just outstanding. Also does great damage with his legs to opposing defenses. And Jordy Nelson seems like his favorite target, a guy that has mastered the back shoulder catch. So start those two guys. For the Green Bay Packers, you want to sit Jermichael Finley. Inconsistent hands, I'm not a big fan of that. And also Cedric Benson. Again, until Green Bay proves they can run the football or want to run the football, don't trust any running back they have back there in the backfield. For the 49ers, you want to sit Michael Crabtree. I think they're going to put a lot of attention on Crabtree, so sit him. And also sit Frank Gore. I don't think he's going to have success finding lanes against that new rebuilt Packers defense. Sleepers in this ball game. The kicker for Green Bay is a sleeper. Mason Crosby, I think he's going to have a field day, pun intended, kicking footballs against this 49ers defense because they will stiffen up and they won't get as many touchdowns as opposed to being in position to kick field goals. And I also look for Randy Moss to be a sleeper. I think they're going to move Randy Moss around and he's going to get his this week as opposed to Crabtree. Now let's go down south, Tampa taking on Carolina. You want to start Cam Newton and D'Angelo Williams. Those two guys should have some success versus that interior Bucs defense. And also Greg Olsen. I think Greg Olsen is the favorite target of Cam Newton. Does a great job of catching the football and making plays after the catch. For Tampa Bay, you want to start Josh Freeman. I think Freeman is going to have a bounce back year. He should have a great opening day because you also want to start his teammate, Vincent Jackson. The big receiver should find some success against that Panthers secondary. Guys you want to sit, I would say sit Steve Smith until he can prove that he's back healthy this season. Didn't play a lot in the preseason, so I would sit Steve Smith in this ball game for the Carolina Panthers, and I would also sit any one of the Bucs running backs. I think the Panthers front seven is vastly improved now. The linebacking core is healthy. They're active up front. I think they will slow down the Bucs running game. So anybody back there, whether it be LeGarrette Blount or also Doug Martin, you want to sit those guys this week. Sleepers, the Panthers defense, like I just mentioned, the front seven is healthy. I think they'll do a great job of stuffing the Bucs running game. And also Mike Williams for the Bucs is a guy you want to keep an eye on. If they start to pay attention to Vincent Jackson, Mike Williams is a guy that can make plays as far as catching footballs, especially for first downs. Now let's move up to Denver and Pittsburgh. Big game this week for the Denver Broncos. I look at who you should start for the Broncos. Start both wide receivers. Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker, I think both those guys should have some success versus the Steelers secondary. And for Pittsburgh, I will start their defense and special teams. They will harass Peyton Manning all day. Start those guys. They'll have some success and also stopping the run. And I would also start Antonio Brown. I think Brown will do a great job of taking some of the pressure off Mike Wallace as he returns back. And speaking of Mike Wallace, you want to sit him this week. And you also want to sit Isaiah Redmond in the backfield for Pittsburgh, as I think the Broncos' run defense is vastly improved. For the Broncos, you want to sit Willis McGahee. I don't think he's going to have success rushing against the Steelers front seven. And sleepers in this ball game, I think Joel Dreesen will be a sleeper for the Broncos, tight end. And I also think for Pittsburgh, Heath Miller, the tight end, most underrated tight end, underappreciated tight end in the league. I think he's going to have some success versus the Broncos. Staying in that division with the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's look at Cincinnati and Baltimore. Big game right here as well. I would start Baltimore's defense and also Ray Rice. I think Ray Rice will have some success. Baltimore's defense is just aggressive. It looks like every play is a jailbreak on defense, and that's what causes a lot of problems. Now for the Bengals, I would start Mike Nugent. The Bengals will be able to move the football. I don't know if they're going to get touchdowns as frequently, so Mike Nugent will have a lot of opportunity to kick field goals. And A.J. Green is a guy that will get his regardless of who's guarding him. So I think you could start A.J. Green versus the Ravens defense. I would sit Torrey Smith this week. I like the matchup of the corners versus the receivers of the Ravens, and the safeties of the Bengals are vastly improved in my opinion, so they have enough talent to keep one over top and eliminate what Torrey Smith can do well. And I would also sit Jermaine Gresham for the Bengals. I don't think he's going to have success versus the Ravens defense. I think he's going to be asked to block a little bit more this week than normal. Sleepers, keep an eye on Ed Dixon for the Ravens. I think he can be a sleeper, as he's going to be Joe Flacco's safety blanket underneath. And also Benjarvis Green-Ellis and the Bengals defense are two sleepers for Cincinnati that you can pick up and may have a big game this week. Lastly, let's go out west. San Diego taking on Oakland. Sits for this week. I'll start with starts for this week. Clearly, you got to start Phillip Rivers. I don't trust the running game for San Diego, and they will throw a lot of balls downfield. Great vertical passing game. So that you can also start Malcolm Floyd as well. I think he's going to have a big day versus that Raiders secondary. For Oakland, start the Raiders defense. I think they will do a great job of putting the Chargers in backed up situations, especially with no ground game. And also start Darren McFadden. I think he's going to start off the week 1 slate with the bang. I think he's going to get over 100 yards and at least 2 touchdowns. Guys, you want to sit this week? I would sit Denarius Moore for the Raiders. I don't think he's going to have success versus that Chargers secondary. And I will also sit Robert Meacham for the Chargers. I don't think he will have success versus that Raiders secondary. I think the majority of the passes and looks will go to Floyd this week. And some sleepers, don't sleep on the Chargers defense. I think when you look at a guy like Melvin Ingram being out there, being able to play some football, being able to do his thing, I think you have to like the chances of him getting pressure on Carson Palmer, who still is holding the football a little bit too long. I would also look at Darius Heyward-Bey as a sleeper for the Oakland Raiders. I look at this guy being the beneficiary of the teams focusing on Denarius Moore. So Darius Heyward-Bey could have some success against the Chargers secondary, especially if they can connect on some of those deep balls, because you know they like to send him vertical down the field. So hopefully you guys take my advice and help you guys win. If you have any other comments or concerns, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. And that was Czar's starting lineup. Good luck this week, week 1 of fantasy football.